Hi, I'm Kaz. This video is gonna be about depression and how I cured my own depression at the ripe young age of 27 years old. Depression is defined by persistent sadness and a lack of interest or pleasure in previously rewarding or enjoyable activities. I've dealt with that in bouts since I was 13 years old. So if you can do the math, that's about 14 years since I started experiencing something to that effect. Now, at 27 years old, I can finally say with confidence that I have let go of my depression. So, why do I say this? Because there are a few shifts and perspectives and some realizations that I had along the way that really gave me an opportunity to combat whatever it was that was there for me around my depression and just let it go. And I'm going to share those with you in this video. So I'm going to start with a consideration about what it is to be human and a consideration about the faculties that we inhabit, our bodies, our brains, and where they come from. So we all know this, but how often do we really take a moment to get present to and consider the fact that our bodies are completely biodegradable? If you bury us in the earth, we return to the earth. Not everything is like that. Not everything is compostable, but we are. So, why does that matter? Well, the reason why that matters is because when we're dealing with something like depression, we are really dealing with coming to grips with our own experience of being human. We're dealing with all the intricacies, all the subtle complexities of what it is to be a consciousness within a body and to live in the society that we live in. So, if we really take a moment to consider that we are nature, it allows us to perceive what we're doing on a day to day basis from a new lens. What are we doing to connect with nature? Not just external nature, but our own intrinsic nature. So, being disconnected from external nature is something that can lead to depression because we're being disconnected from that which gave us a body. A lot of the things that I'm going to say in this video are considered cliche, but these things are fundamental to human existence. And there's a reason why they're cliches because they've been said so many times, but the reason they've been said so many times is because they are fundamental to human nature. So they're going to continue being said so long as they continue being fundamental to human nature. So one of these things is being outside. Believe it or not, I saw an article a couple years ago that was a scientific study, and it was from Reddit. It was a scientific study on why going outside is healthy, and it just baffled me. It was surprising, and I'm not even somebody who was really born in nature. I wasn't like a jungle kid or anything like that. I was born in the city, and I was always attracted to the city. Um, but to to think that we've gotten to a point where we need a scientific study to show that it's a good thing for us to go out into nature is kind of an indication of how far disconnected we are from our original nature. So, going outside for a certain amount of time, being in a healthy circadian rhythm, waking up on time, going to sleep on time, just being in natural harmony with our circadian rhythm and the way that we are wired to function. Another example of being disconnected from external nature is by being so preoccupied with our own thoughts that we fail to actually be present in life, and we sometimes fail to give our bodies what it needs to function properly. So, for example, drinking enough water, eating healthy foods, or at least nutritional foods, getting enough sleep, basic things like that. Sometimes it's so easy to be preoccupied in our mind and thoughts that consume us that we forget to tend to our own basic needs. And that is a vital, vital, vital thing. If we don't do that, then we just leave ourselves prone to even further discombobulation. The next one, and this is something that maybe we don't think about too much, having our main sources of satisfaction and fulfillment come from non-natural things or non-organic things. So, for example, if You get your main source of fulfillment from video games. That's something that I did for most of my life. At a certain point, we come to this uh, realization, hopefully, that the game is just a game, and we're interacting with this screen for such a long time. If we're not careful, we just are not being connected to nature whatsoever. So in that disconnection with nature, being connected to something that's artificially made, something that's man-made, we kind of lose touch with our health. It becomes easier to lose touch with our health. Internally, being connected to our own nature is being connected to our intuition, being connected to our emotion, being connected to our feelings. Natural human experiences that many of us aren't able to process properly, aren't able to actually observe and allow to move through us in the way that we're supposed to. The more we can develop our emotional intelligence and our ability to be with intense emotions and not distract ourselves from an emotion just because it's intense, even if that emotion is a negative experience, it's okay. It's okay to experience a negative feeling. As long as we allow ourselves the space to move through those feelings with compassion, with love, with acceptance, and with awareness, we are able to transcend those experiences. Eventually, we are able to let go of those negative experiences and move forward. But if we don't take the time to actually intentionally deal with and confront and allow those negative emotions to come through us, what we're doing is we're just bottling them up for later. And that will never really work out for us in the long run. Now, the last thing is learning how to breathe properly. Now, this is one of those things that's talked about so much or made to be so cliche because it's just said so much. But breathing properly is honestly one of the most fundamental keys to being able to handle any situation. If you really consider something like anxiety, if you really consider panic attacks like what they are, yes, they're characterized by not breathing properly, but so often it's not just that something causes us to not breathe properly, it's that we don't breathe properly and then something happens and then we're not able to reel it in. And oftentimes it can be a combination of both, where something happens, we're not breathing properly, and then we get taken away by the experience. We no longer have faculty, or we no longer are the main ones in control of our breath. And when we lose control of our breath and our breathing, we can't breathe deeply, we start hyperventilating. It's a mess. Our natural bodily functions are so tied to our breath, and our mental states are so tied to our breath that if we lose control of our breath, then we lose control of ourselves in a lot of ways. So breathing practice, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, meditation every single day, or at least on the days that you can, that makes a really big difference in being able to ground yourself through your breathing in intense situations. So the first part is realizing that we are nature and then learning to adapt with our own natural capacities. The second thing that really helped me moving through my depression is becoming responsible for my own experience of life. What does that mean? When I told stories about my past, there were many different occasions in which I realized in the telling of the story that I would be putting blame onto extrinsic circumstances or other people in my stories. And you may be thinking like, oh, well, yeah, that's normal. Like everybody does that. Sure, yeah, normal. Great, that's fine. Um, Depression is also pretty normal. So if we're going based off of what's normal and what's not normal, doing what's normal is not going to lead to a life without depression. That's the unfortunate reality of the society that we live in. If you're in America, I'm not 100% sure about all the other societies, but I do know that in America and in many other societies, um, this is a common theme that what is normal is not healthy. So when I told a story and I found that I was blaming something else for my own position, my own actions, my own choices in that story, I was giving away my power. See, responsibility is what gives us the ability to respond in situations. If we are allocating responsibility to something that's external, then what we're doing in essence is we're giving the ability to respond to something that's external. So we're actually robbing ourselves of our own innate power of choice, of our own innate power to respond, and we're giving that to something else. And so when we do that enough times, what we end up with is no power. We end up with no ability to respond. And if we have no ability to respond in our own lives, then we're completely at the effect of everything that's happening around us, or at the effect of what other people say to us, what other people say about us, what the weather is for the day, God knows, we're at the effect of anything. And when we're at the effect of life, we are no longer in control of our own life, of our own existence. And every day we feel powerless. We feel like we can't do anything about our life, the direction that it's going. And that is just not how it really is. It's not how it has to be. If we can actually go and reclaim responsibility from the areas which we gave it away, we can reclaim our own power and our own ability to choose direction in our lives and our own ability to respond to things that happen in our lives. This can be as simple as not blaming other people for our own responses. And this can be really challenging at first because it's so conditioned and so normalized in society to blame other people if they did something to affect us, right? It's like, well, that person pushed me, so of course I'm going to be pissed off. That person said this to me, so of course I'm going to respond this way. How else could I possibly respond? And so that's really the question, is actually how else could I possibly respond? If somebody pushes me, that doesn't mean I have to push them back. Now we have whatever we think about that. We might think that makes us weak. We might think that makes us stepped on like a doormat. Whatever comes up, that's okay. That's totally fine. And those are all totally valid options and opinions. This perspective is merely just an opportunity to reclaim our power over our ability to respond, because really what is not powerful in that situation, what is not choice, is to say that happened, therefore I do this. This is the only way I can respond to that situation because I am at the effect of that situation. So if we can be responsible, take responsibility for our own place in a situation. I can't be responsible for the fact that somebody else did something, but I can be responsible for how I respond to it. I can be responsible for how I choose to act in a situation. See, for me, at some point I started to realize my depression was not self-generated. When I would tell stories about things that happened to me that would justify why I was depressed, like, oh, I tried to go out, I paid for a ticket to an event, and they didn't let me in. And I was standing there outside of the venue, and then they let a group of girls go in who did, I don't know whether or not they paid for the event, but I paid for the event. They didn't let me go in, and then they let them go in. And I was telling that story over and over and over again. And what I realized was when I told that story, it left me with this negative experience. And not only that, it left me with a negative experience that was at the effect of something else that was outside of me. And what I made it mean about myself, see, what I made that experience mean about myself was that there was something wrong with me, or that I'm not fit to be in this society, or that other people are more highly valued than I, so therefore something's wrong with me. So in essence, I was blaming my unhappiness on the way that society is structured. I was giving away the control of my happiness, of my well-being to society. If I can blame others for my unhappiness, then I'm giving away the power of being happy, of me being happy, to something that is so out of my control that I can't do anything about it. Now, why would I ever do that? If I actually take a moment to look at it, why would I ever do that? Why would somebody else be in charge of whether I'm happy? So that's one step that I took in a direction of allowing myself to become responsible for my own happiness. The next part is becoming responsible for my own depression. Now, that can be really confronting because if we're responsible for our own depression, then does that mean that are we the ones that caused it? Well, yes, because we are the ones that have our bodies. We are the consciousness that exists in tandem with our mind and our body. So the only reason I say yes to did we cause it is not so that we can be blamed and we can be at fault. Like it's my fault that I have depression. I'm bad. I'm wrong. No, 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 not at all. Actually, it's the opposite. Because if I'm the one that caused my depression, I'm the one that can let go of my depression. If I'm the one that caused my own depression, I'm the one that can cause my own happiness. See, because responsibility gives us the ability to respond. Taking responsibility back, that I'm responsible for my own depression, gives me the ability and the opportunity to respond to my own depression. What am I going to do about it? Yes, I'm depressed right now. What am I going to do about my depression? Not, I'm depressed, let me wallow in it. And there's nothing wrong with that either. Sometimes we have to wallow in it until we get sick of it. It's all valid. It's all valid. Whatever led you into this moment right now, seeing this video, listening to these words, it's all perfect. And there's nothing to make wrong about it. All we can do is be responsible for where we are right now. See, we can't respond to something that exists outside of our own sphere of influence. If we are convinced, if we are believing that we don't have the influence and the power to make a change in our own experience of life, then who does? And are we really going to wait for whoever does have that power to do something about it? And just be here at the effect of our own experience of life because it's relatable, because it's normal. How long are we going to suffer because suffering is normal? How long are we going to choose to suffer? See, suffering is inevitable in this experience of life. However, the length and duration with which we experience our suffering to a certain extent is our own choice. So that was the second thing that really helped me let go of my depression, was becoming responsible for my own experience of my own life. So the third one and the last one is learning how to reframe. I know when I was in my state of depression, I would ask myself a lot of questions. And I came to a certain point where I realized the questions I was asking myself are a choice. Now, it's not wrong, it's not bad to ask questions. You know, we want to question things. We really do want to question things. And I know when I was dealing with my depression, there were certain things that kept on coming up for me, and I just wanted to know what the answer to those questions were. However, the nature of the questions are what stuck with me. The energy of the questions are what stuck with me because I was asking questions from a place of depression. I wasn't asking questions from a place of curiosity. I was asking questions from a place of sadness. I was asking questions from a place of what's wrong with me. And so I was asking myself questions like, what's wrong with me? Or why am I not good enough? And now, if I really take a moment to observe those questions, see, because we are sculpted by the questions we ask ourselves. Every time we ask a question, something comes up with an answer. It's the law of polarity. It's the law of cause and effect. Every single time a question is asked, there is an answer answered. So when we ask the questions, we are generating our own answers. We're generating our own experience. And so the questions we ask ourselves are paramount. If we're asking ourselves questions that actually have no light within them, if we ask ourselves questions that the answer is a half truth, then we're not allowing ourselves the fullest experience of life that we can have. So if we really take a moment to look at these questions, why am I not good enough? Or what's wrong with me? We can see that within these questions, there's a foundational belief that something is wrong with me and I'm not good enough. Now, the way we got to those beliefs may be very convincing. They may make a lot of sense. You know, we can have a lot of stories about why we're not good enough. We can have a lot of justifications about why we're not good enough or why something's wrong with us. And we can be righteous and justified in those points. However, they don't serve us, and it's not true. The concept of being good enough is a concept, it's an idea. The concept of something wrong with us, with a human, is an idea. We are what we are. Being enough, that is a mental construct. So if we relate to our beliefs that we're not good enough, that there's something inherently wrong with us, that there's something messed up about us, if we relate to those beliefs as though they are true, then what we're going to experience is we're going to have continual experiences in life that point to those things being true and those things being real, because that's the effect of having a focal point like that in our perspective. Whatever our focal point is in life, we're going to find more of that. It works very similarly to an algorithm on a social media platform. See, on social media, if you start liking things, if you start interacting with posts, if you start commenting on posts, it doesn't matter whether the comments are positive or negative. It doesn't matter. If you interact with something, if you spend time with something, you're going to get more of that thing. So if we spend time interacting with these questions that really don't serve us and really don't have a possibility to benefit us with their answers, then we're going to keep seeing more of those types of questions. We're going to keep seeing more of that nature of reality because we're just going to be looking for it. So all that being said, we're really left with an opportunity to ask questions about our questions. See, if I ask myself the question, why am I not good enough? I can ask myself another question of, why am I asking that? Where does that come from? Who said I'm not good enough? If I'm the one that said I'm not good enough, then can I also say that I am good enough? Can I actually see that if I say that I'm good enough, there's just as much evidence, if not more, to say that I'm good enough than there is to say that I'm not? And most of the time, what we'll find is that there's plenty of evidence to see that we are good enough. So dig a little bit deeper, ask more questions instead of being stuck with the questions that don't serve you. When we give ourselves the opportunity to dig a little bit deeper, we can deconstruct our own false belief systems that used to limit us. In this process, we can let go of beliefs that don't serve us. And when we let go of beliefs that don't serve us, we start to experience something new in the world. When we let go of these beliefs that don't serve us, when we let go of judgments that don't serve us, usually things that we accumulate from negative experiences or from listening to other people talk about their negative experiences. See, what we can do is we can alchemize that negative perspective into something more like wisdom, something that can serve us, rather than something that keeps us from experiencing the life that we're meant to experience. If we let go of our judgments about the way life is supposed to be, about life is messed up, or the world is terrible, or society is awful, if we can really let go of those judgments and alchemize those into wisdom, into knowing, into not being swayed by popular opinion, into not being convinced by things that aren't true, then we can actually use those things to empower us to have a more true and a more real and a more meaningful experience of life, but only when we take the time to intentionally transform that energy from negativity into wisdom. You see, the tree, when the tree is planted, it has to grow roots deep within the earth in the darkness before it can have a foundation to arise into the light and to grow towards the sun. We function very similarly to that. We need to have our darkness. We need to go through difficulty so that we can experience rising into the light. And we can have a foundation upon which we're not toppled easily. We can have a foundation upon which I know that the darkness exists. I experience the darkness, and I use that. I use that as energy to catapult me further into the light. The next thing that we can do in this context is we can let go of half-truths. A lot of the conversation that is normalized in society are based on half-truths. See, a question of, are men bad? Are men good? Are women bad? Are women good? Is it good to be a Democrat? Is it good to be a Republican? Bipartisanship, half and half. See, these things, these experiences, right? When there's two sides to an experience, there's always going to be two half-truths. Now we can side with one or we can side with the other based on which one we identify with more. But you see, that's a trap. Because for one half-truth, there is always going to be another half-truth. And if you can take a step back perspective and realize the truth behind both of the experiences, that is what gives us true power. If you're familiar with those Magic Seeing Eye books that they used to put out, I don't know if they still make them, but I grew up with those. There is a two-dimensional pattern, and this two-dimensional pattern, if you just look at the pattern for what it looks like on the surface, you'll never see the truth that lies underneath. But if you look at it in a certain way, they have you go like this with the book so that you can see it, focus and defocus. A lot of it is about defocusing and not identifying so strongly with what something seems to be. If you can take a moment to defocus from whatever that is, you can actually see that there's a hidden image underneath. So that is the way that the Magic Seeing Eye book works, but this is also the way that a lot of half-truths work. If we can take a moment to de-identify from that which we identify with in the situation and take a step back to look wholly and holistically at the whole thing, see, defocus from what everybody else is focusing on, then we allow ourselves to develop our own unique perspective on a situation and not be so emotionally invested in one experience or the other based on the identity that we formed through our past. This, in essence, gives us the opportunity to create our own unique perspective in life instead of being so tied to the perspectives that already exist and needing to identify with one or the other so that we can fit into a certain circle. So life's not about fitting in. We're not here just to fit in. We're here to become the greatest version of ourselves, to expand in our own unique potential, to overcome our darkness so that we can encapsulate our light, our true essence, to become somebody who is a great role in every role that we fit, to become the best version of ourselves in every way possible, and to live a life that's worth living. That's why we're here. So the last part of reframing that really helped me move past my depression is going from I am depressed to I am dealing with depression. Let me say that again. Going from I am depressed to I am dealing with depression. You see the difference between those two sayings, those two words? This is the importance of reframing, because when we use our words to say and to extrapolate upon our experiences and to explain them to people, we're actually creating an entire reality with those words. See, if I am depressed, I am identifying with my depression. I am my depression. And you see, that doesn't serve me. That doesn't give me a space to take a step back, because how can I take a step back from something that I am? So when I move from I am depressed to I am dealing with depression, you see how both of those things are true in experience, right? Both of those things could apply and point to the same experience of life. However, one gives us a space to say, I am dealing with something, and one tells us, I am something. I am identified with something. So if I am dealing with depression, then I am the one that has the depression. I am not the depression. See, we never confuse the sky for the cloud. The cloud passes through the sky. We're never confused that that cloud is the sky. We know that that's just a cloud in the sky. The sky exists beyond the clouds. Even if it's super, super cloudy, we know that the sky exists behind the clouds. How do we know? Because we know, because we've seen it, because we've experienced the sky. We know that it's there behind the clouds. And we know that once the clouds pass, the sky will be there. Just like we know we are there. We know that we existed before our depression. We know that we will exist after our depression. We know that what we are is separate from our depression, and our depression is something that we're going through. It's not what we are. There's no need to identify so strongly with the things that we go through. Everything we go through is a phase, it's a chapter, it's an energy that we move through, it's a space that we can integrate later on so that we can become more whole, so that we can experience more perspectives of our reality, so that we can have a more holistic and a more grounded approach later on in life, so that we can support and assist other people who are going through similar things, and we can connect on a level with that. But they're not there for us to identify with so strongly, because see, when we identify with our depression, who are we when we're not depressed? If I am depressed, how do I become not depressed if I am depressed, if I am the depression? So learning how to reframe the way that we say these things may seem like a small thing, but really, 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 especially with something like depression, which is us being so strongly identified with these thought forms and feelings that are trying to pass through us and move through us. If we stick to those things so strongly, we don't give ourselves a chance to allow it to move. We don't give ourselves a chance to move through it. And it's okay that we're dealing with these things. It's okay that you have negative emotions. It's okay that sometimes you don't want to wake up. It's okay that sometimes you don't want to move forward. It's okay. It's all happening for you. It's all happening for a reason. And I know that that might sound contrived and that might sound like it's BS, but it's not. And the sooner you allow yourself to fall into that experience of knowing that it's not BS, the sooner you'll be able to have a more full, whole experience of life that you want to have. And this depression that you're moving through will allow you to have a greater perspective and a greater gratitude and appreciation for when things are good. And not a day goes by now that I'm not grateful. I'm not grateful to be alive, that I'm not grateful to wake up in the morning, that I'm not grateful to experience happiness and joy. And so much of that is because I had to move through my depression, because it held me down for so long, because I allowed myself to stay in that space for so long. And I finally allowed myself to move through it, that now I have such a broadened perspective. I know what it's like to deal with negative emotions. I know how to relate to people that deal with these emotions. And I can finally say that I have let go of identifying with those emotions and that experience. And now I can finally share with you how I did it. And hopefully this makes a difference for you. But thank you for watching this video. Thank you for sticking all the way through. If you made it this far, you're absolutely amazing. You're a champion. You're going to make it through this. And you already are making it through this right now. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got a lot of value out of this. And I will see you in the next one.